fellow paper presenters and esteemed members of the audience. My paper is entitled Doing Border History in Northeast India, Quest for Historical Narratives. The very first question that arises is can there be a genre like border history? In fact, this is one area where we need to look at. And what I feel is that the dominant discourse on any country actually leaves out the periphery, the borders, the borderland, the frontier areas. And that's the reason why there is a need for a relook into this. And there are actually many work on border history that has been done already, and even in Northeast, as I'm just going to very briefly present it. So historically, actually, borders have evolved from vague, shifting boundaries to clearly defined lines, with the concept of borderlands, which emerged to actually denote both sides of the border. So borderlands are not just physical regions, but also cultural and political spaces where identities are shaped by both separation and connection. And the study of their history reveals a complex narrative of tension, conflict, and hybridity, rather than a single linear history. There is another term, which is frontier, and this actually comes from, which is used widely, especially while doing the history of South America. The Spanish used to call frontera, that is, the front. And according to William von Sandel, and there are many other theorists who have tried to explain border theory and borderland society. I'm not going into the details of that just to save time. But basically, border and frontier are related but distinct concepts describing lines or zones that separate territories, peoples, or jurisdiction. So border is a legally defined, often surveyed line or narrow zone, marking the limit of a sovereign state's territory or administrative unit. It's codified in treaties, laws, and maps. On the other hand, a frontier is a broader, sometimes vague zone at the end of settled or controlled territory where jurisdiction, culture, and effective control are fluid or contested. It can be geographic, economic, or social, as well as political. So these are emerging concepts, and it has changed over time. How do we view borders? How do we view frontiers? How do we view the borderland? And this can be done in the case of Northeast also, where we are crisscrossed by so many different borders, including 98% of us actually are connected to foreign countries. So it's important to note that when we talk of border history or borderland history, we talk of multiple histories. Borderland history is not a single history of one nation or a state, but a composite of the intertwined histories of multiple places, people, and processes and processes can include migration, trade, things like that. These are also areas of flux where power and identity operate together. It is a history of areas in dispute, ambiguity, and cultural mixing, where meaning and identity are constantly being reshaped. In other words, borders are not just natural features, though they may mark a boundary as such, but socially constructed divisions that can create unique cultural identities and complicate the identities of those who live there. Then, the history of borderlands is often a history of the resistance of people who live in those areas and their ability to create new forms of cultural and political life, even within the constraints imposed by a border. There are or can be studied as case studies as well. We can take up case studies of supposing Manipur-Myanmar border or Assam-Nagaland border and things like that. So overall, Border history has to be studied with a multidisciplinary approach where sociology, anthropology, including folklore, psychology, political geography, and linguistics could all contribute in their own way. There are actually internationally many significant works on borders or on frontiers done. I think many of us are aware of the significance of the frontier by Frederick Jackson Turner. And then very recently in 2024, there is a book which has come out, A History of the World in 47 Borders, the stories behind the lines on our maps. It's a fascinating analysis actually of the different borders that have shaped history all over the world. And it includes partition as well, partition of India. So there is also another work, interesting work by Suchitra Vijayan, Midnight's Borders. Actually, basically, she talks of the partition border only, a people's history of modern India, in which actually she tries to attempt understanding the Indian states, its pathologies, and the fringes that it governs. So, as far as Northeast is concerned, we all know that borders are politically constructed but socially fashioned that can create unique cultural identities, as I've already stated. This has been highlighted to some extent by Sanghamitra Mishra in her book, Becoming a Borderland, The Politics of Space and Identity in Colonial Northeastern India, published in 2011. Then, even Sanjay Hazarika's book, Rites of Passage, Border Crossings, Imagined Homelands, India's East and Bangladesh, is a phenomenal work actually based on primary sources, where he talks of borders and the border crossings that take place. And there is another political scientist, Sanjeev Borua, who has also contributed to the discourse on space and identity of Northeast India. In fact, as he states, it can be seen even India as Northeast India as a whole can be looked differently. As he states, international borders surround Northeast on almost all four sides, except for the narrow Siliguri corridor on the west. While we are used to thinking of the region as the northeastern borderlands of South Asia, it can also be thought of as the northwestern borderlands of Southeast Asia. Anyway, there are other books as well, and Ranju Bezborwa's book, The Pursuit of Colonial Interest in India's Northeast, can be considered a proper border history as it focuses on the inner lines and inner boundaries. Right. Yeah. So, and there were many papers in Neha which on the Mizoram border, which I am just skipping now because of lack of time. So this historiographical survey of works on border history of Northeast India reveals that most of it, there are a lot of works that can still be done and that there is possible. So, and there is more research possible in pre-colonial period as well. In the context of border demarcation, it could be perceived that the pre-colonial society did not have concepts like unitary citizenship or rigid nation states, which came later on. The making of the Ahom-Mughal boundary as per the Treaty of Koliabor in 1639, or the concepts of frontiers or borders that mark the territories of the Ahom, Dimasa or Koch kingdom are matters that might entail interesting historiographical investigation. A variety of historical events have shaped human life structures and identities. Various scholars have viewed the relationship between borders and borderlanders according to their approaches. The historical realities of the ecologically and culturally very diverse Northeast India, with its polity and economy, would gain more from historical research on the borders. Thank you very much.